can you introduce yourself to our public and to say a little bit more about your projects and everything?
Yes, my name is Paolo Bray, and I have been working on conservation for over 30 years. In particular, I started in the early 90s with the Dolphin-Safe project, which certifies tuna caught without harming dolphins. I'm currently the international director of this project. And then in 2008, I developed Friend of the Sea, and then after 10 years, Friend of the Earth, which are programs for protection of endangered species, but also certification programs for sustainable products and services.
What is their mission and how do they contribute to sustainability, these projects?
Well, Friend of the Sea and Friend of the Earth's mission is to motivate the industry to produce in a way that better respects the environment. And this is why I believe that certifications can be a very important tool to achieve tangible conservation results too. And at the same time, by reinvesting the revenue from the certification activity into conservation projects, we also proactively help conservation in different parts of the world.
As the founder and director of A Friend of the Sea, what inspired you to establish this organization?
Well, I have always wanted to do a job that provides my small contribution to protecting this beautiful planet and its biodiversity. And in the early 90s, when I finished
the connection, can you
yes,
please start from the beginning? It's interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So
okay, can you start again?
Yeah, we start again.
Okay.
So in the early 90s, at the end of the 80s, the medias were highlighting more and more environmental issues, such as possible impact on the climate, loss of habitat and biodiversity in the Amazon. And so when I finished university, I wanted to provide my small contribution to saving this beautiful planet, protecting biodiversity. That is why I looked for companies or institutions which were working on the environment. And I started then working for the Earth Island Institute, which is an NGO based in California, which has launched at that time the Dolphin-Safe tuna project. And over the years, I really realized that certifications could be a very important tool to achieve tangible conservation results. So I developed projects and certifications which tackled other potential impacts of fisheries and aquaculture, and then agriculture and farming. And then the whole project has expanded to the current status. And we feel that over the years, the awareness has changed, has improved. And nowadays, to different levels, companies are all engaged in trying to reduce their impact and be socially responsible.
What were the key challenges you faced during the early stages of this project?
Well, at that time, probably people don't remember or don't realize that there was no internet in the beginning of the 90s. and we used the fax to communicate. Communication was much slower. There was not enough available information about, for example, the status of the marine resources. Nowadays, we can download any document, any scientific information, and everything is much easier. So until the 2000, when internet started to expand, people were not really aware of all these issues. And it was difficult even to communicate with companies far away. So the activity really expanded largely with the arrival of internet. And also awareness was much lower. I remember going to companies, telling them to source from Dolphin-Safe approved suppliers. They were looking at me as if I was coming from Mars, because they were not aware that they were selling endangered species, and they didn't see why they should have moved in that direction. Nowadays, a lot of things have changed, and companies worldwide make sustainability claims. In general, there is a positive movement, but there is also a lot of confusion in the messages, in the information provided to consumers, and some of this is misleading. This is why certifications allow to verify by a third party these claims, and they provide a better message, more reliable for consumers in their choices at the point of sale.
Well, could you explain the Dolphin-Safe project and its significance in promoting marine conservation, and what impact has it had on the fishing industry?
The Dolphin-Safe project started in the early 90s. I'm currently the international director of this project. And it was started because information came through that the tuna industry was targeting dolphins, in particular in the area of the eastern tropical Pacific between Baja California and Peru, by using helicopters with explosives, because in this area, frequently, about 50% of the time, you find the tuna schools under the dolphins. And this way, the tuna industry from the 50s to the 80s killed approximately 7 million dolphins in this area, and decimated the two local populations for the two species, which are frequently associated with big yellowfin tuna. And so the Earth Island organization managed to make a footage of this activity, an undercover footage, which was concluded by a marine biologist working for the Earth Island called Sam Labadi. And this footage, this film was aired on the major TVs in North America. And thus the major companies, tuna companies, decided to join the project, the Dolphin-Safe project, and engage at not handling tuna caught by setting nets on dolphins. Gradually, the whole tuna industry worldwide joined the project. We carry out about 700 audits every year to verify compliance, not only in the Eastern Tropical Pacific, but worldwide, because there are other issues related to tuna fishing. And we managed this way to contribute to the lowering of dolphin mortality in the Eastern Tropical Pacific by approximately 95%, 98%, from the initial 100,000 dolphins killed every year to the current 1,500. This made me realize that certification could be useful in conservation. And so that's why I launched Friend of the Sea. One must realize that the Dolphin-Safe project has been the precursor of the sustainable seafood movement. and open the eyes to the impacts of fisheries and then aquaculture on the environment, the potential impact.
Here in Bulgaria, we have also not such a big problem with so many killed dolphins, but when the fishermen throws their things to catch the fish, many dolphins just go in the ropes, and every summer we have some dead cases on our coast.
Yes.
They're not doing by explosives, but they are doing with other stuffs like fishing nets.
Yes, in the Black Sea, there is a issue of, for example, use of drift nets, which are like, they are called like nets, walls of death, because they are very long and drifting, and anything which is in the size of the mesh remains stuck, so they are not selective, and often dolphins get caught, also whales, as well as when the fishing gear is lost. The ghost fishing, the so-called ghost fishing, kills other cetaceans. So this is one of the issues, and which has to be approached by the governments at UN level. There is a ban in the use of high seas drift nets which are over 2.5 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
So this should be implemented and enforced hopefully also in Bulgaria.
We hope so. Friend of the Sea is known for its sustainability certification programs. How do these programs work, and what criteria do you use to assess the sustainability of a product or company?
Well, we indeed have developed different standards under the Friend of the Sea logo, trademark, which reward those companies respect the marine habitat. So we developed initially the standards for seafood from sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, but then expanded into the nutraceutical products, in particular the omega-3 supplements and the collagen, where we have become the leading certification for the industry for sustainability. We then developed other standards for cosmetics like UV creams, sunscreens, which do not impact the coral reef or the marine habitat. Standards for sustainable tourism practices, for sustainable shipping, even sustainable salt. So marine salt can be carried out, be produced in a sustainable way. This is in most cases true in the European countries, but they can also be produced with an impact. So we develop standards for this. All these standards are available on our website and public. They've been created by a technical committee made of stakeholders representing the different, made by professionals representing the different stakeholders, so NGOs, industry, institutions, etc. And the audits are carried out by qualified auditors of independent certification bodies, which are these agencies which normally carry out the audits, the inspections, which themselves are monitored and verified, accredited by the national accreditation bodies, which are there to actually analyze and monitor and accredit those certifications which are really reliable, consistent, professional, etc., and independent. So we carry out, by means of this certification body, hundreds of audits every month. And the audits are then repeated every year or year and a half, depending on the standard, to verify continuous compliance. And in some cases, we also use, when the certification relates to fisheries, we use satellites to monitor continuously the moving of the fishing vessels to verify, for example, that they don't fish in the marine protected areas.
Mm-hmm. In your opinion, what role do certifications and labels play in promoting sustainable practices, and how can consumers and businesses benefit from these certifications?
There are some claims like organic, bio, which are regulated by law. And you cannot claim that your product is organic if it has not been certified by an independent third-party verification or audit. Sustainability claims, and you know how much this word is used nowadays for anything from sustainable city, transportation, food, clothes, etc. They are not regulated by law. So any company can decide to make claims that it is sustainable or natural, etc. And there is almost no way to prevent false claims if they're not consistent with reality. So this is why sustainability certifications like Friend of the Sea and Friend of the Earth, which are real third party, because we have no interest in the companies we certify, and they are themselves verified by the national institutions like the national accreditation bodies, are very important for consumers to be able to rely on credible statements and claims and make a responsible choice. So it's very important. They are very important, and they can really make a change because they motivate also the companies to go for the certification and thus to improve their production practices, reduce their impact on the environment.
Okay, but do you have this support global on a global level from the EU and other governments to drive sustainability on a global scale? What your main goals to do this and initiatives as a president of the World Sustainability Foundation?
Well, we collaborate a lot with the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and its branches in fisheries, like Infofish, and in agriculture, in the sense that we are often invited to their conferences so that we can speak to the industry, explain our projects. The FAO, the United Nations, cannot formally support private initiatives like ours, but they are morally supporting us in the sense that they always provide us with the stage to tell about our activities. At the EU level, we are using the national accreditation bodies, which are created by EU regulation, to verify our credibility. So in that, we follow the EU rules, and they allow us to be accredited. And we are one of the very few certifications which are recognized by the national accreditation bodies. Most of the certifications you see out there, like MSC, ASC, BAP, Global Gap for seafood, as well as SA 8000 for social accountability. And most of those you see for for agriculture certification, like Rainforest Alliance or others, they are not verified by the national accreditation bodies. Only organic, Global Gap, and Friend of the Earth are recognized at this stage. We really hope that they all try and be recognized, follow what is the EU law for credible certifications. And as a consequence, we are also mentioned as a qualified certification in the protocols for minimal green criteria, which are used to select those products which can go for the public administrations like hospitals, schools, the army, etc. So we have some support. We are considered for the fundings of projects as a reliable certification. So let's say you are a company and want to apply for funds from the EU. And these funds are given only if you have a sustainability certification. We are considered as valuable. So indirectly, we have some level of support, but we rarely have received ourselves funds from the EU projects. We did apply. We only got funds from Open Philanthropy in the US for projects related to fish welfare. So in this sense, we are a bit disappointed for not having been supported in practical terms. But I also believe that if a project makes sense, it generates its own funding and doesn't really need to go for funding from other institutions. We can make it ourselves. We are growing. Companies are relying more and more. Consumers are gradually trusting our work, and that's the way to go.
And are there any emerging trends or areas that you believe will become more important in the coming years?
Yes, I think there will be more and more concern from the consumers also about social accountability, the respect of the workers and of the crews in the seafood activities and fisheries. This aspect has often been given for granted, but that's not the case. You should be aware that, for example, in Europe alone, 25–30% of the agro foods are produced by farming activities, agriculture activities, which are not in compliance with the legal aspects of workers. They do not respect workers. And there are some extremes like forced labor in Italy itself and in most countries where immigrants are exploited with no respect to produce maybe some of the products that we then see on our table. And the situation is even worse if you go out of the EU, as you can imagine, because EU is even more regulated. And for fisheries, this is a major issue. We have audited companies, a major Korean tuna producer, one of the biggest, possibly the biggest tuna company in the world, that we found out that they were keeping the workers for over 1 year at sea without allowing them to return home. And this tuna then comes over to Italy. You find it in some of the tuna steaks you buy on the counter in the supermarket because it's a cheaper price. This is against all the International Labour Organization's rules, and it's really terrible. And the company has not yet changed its mean of production. And we have notified this also to WWF, Greenpeace, etc., and nobody has done anything on this front. So we are really hoping that these things will change. Of course, we did not certify them.
Yeah.
And so this also relates to environmental impact because they allow the crew to do shark finning. So social and environmental are often tied together in the wrong way. I think in the future, social accountability will be a growing issue over which consumers hopefully will demand much more compliance. And in terms of farming, I think that people will start asking more and more about animal welfare. In particular, for seafood production, there are new studies which confirm how fish are sentient, so they have a social life, they have feelings, they feel pain when they are caught or farmed in the wrong way. And so that's why we introduced new standards for aquaculture and soon also for fishing in terms of fish welfare, because we want that Friend of the Sea represents not only compliance with environmental issues, but also fish welfare.
And I'm sorry. And when we are talking about all these problems, what are the biggest challenges faced by organizations and businesses in adopting sustainable practices? How can they overcome these challenges?
Well, one of the challenges is lack of information. Some of these issues are quite complex, like sustainability in fishing. You can imagine it's very difficult to estimate the impact of fishing, because it is a fishing of species in a very complex environment, the marine system, and so there are chain impacts which are difficult to estimate sometimes, and the audits are quite complex. At the same time, another complexity for companies is to be able to convince their suppliers to implement sustainable practices. Because if you are a small company and you have a lot of suppliers, very difficult that you can influence them to be sustainable. A bigger company can do it relatively more easily. But so this is an issue which sometimes prevent companies to try and improve the sustainability of their products, because they are sourcing from other companies, maybe in other parts of the world, which do not want to open their doors to audits, verification, etc. That's one of the complexity. The global market for food and for other products is so international that sometimes it's not enough for the company facing consumers to want to be sustainable. They have also to find sustainable suppliers.
Would you share a success story or an example of how Friend of the Sea has made a positive impact on marine conservation or sustainability?
Yes, sure. We have moved. We have contributed greatly to moving the industry towards better monitoring of its activities, as we've been the first ones to request full-time observers on board, or in alternative CCTVs, which are those videos TVs that can record all the activity carried out by the fishing vessel. So we have been precursor in pushing that, and also in monitoring vessels by means of satellites. And now some of these things are becoming law at the EU level, at least for more risky fishing activities. And several of the companies we have audited did not have these tools, and they were requested to implement them. Now, soon consumers will be able, if they will want, to click or through a QR code on the product and see exactly the whole fishing vessel. It's quite boring, actually, because some of these vessels stay out for 3 months and they fish only from time to time. But potentially this can be done, and so this will be even more credibility and transparency for consumers, which will be able, for example, to actually have video evidence that that fishing vessel did not set the nets on dolphins, for example, or did not catch endangered species, because you can actually video record everything that is caught.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to individuals or businesses looking to make a positive environmental impact? How can they start their sustainability journey?
Well, I think I learned myself that one can and should eat less. I believe strongly in the 1 meal a day principle, that you can eat probably only at lunch, And that's much better for your health because you're fasting more, a little bit. It's not so much fasting. With fasting has proved to be a very good thing for the organism, for your body. And consequently, by eating less, you can live longer and you can reduce your impact on the environment, obviously. And of course, eat less and eat healthy, which normally means eat more plants and a bit less animal products. I am vegan since 15 years, but you respect anybody's opinion on this. However, even the World Health Organization has confirmed that you should eat more vegetables and less meat or animal proteins, at least compared to the current one. And this will have a lower impact on the environment. At the same time, I really think that we should be more minimalist. That will help also with our mental health. There are many videos on the internet about minimalism movement, and this means buying less clothes, maybe clothes that last longer. Don't go into this frenzy of buying anything continuously, even if you don't need it. We're filling our houses with things that we're not gonna use. And then, of course, in transportation and so on, you know, try to implement more sustainable practices. And finally, I would say, you know, when you go and buy a product, whether it's food or others, try and read, give a second to read or to look if they have some form of certification, even though some are not so consistent as ours. It's still a good sign that the company has somehow opened the door or it's willing to go in that direction. And if possible, go and look for Friend of the Sea and Friend of the Earth or third-party certifications because they are more reliable and credible.
Okay, and our last question, can you tell us a little bit more how Bulgaria can join projects as yours, and where you think is our biggest problems, and from where we should begin on the path of sustainable future?
We have products and certified and companies involved all around Bulgaria, from Albania to Greece to Turkey, to Yugoslavia, let's say, to Serbia, Croatia, etc. We still don't have companies or products certified in Bulgaria. So I take the opportunity to suggest to any companies who feels ready to have a third-party verification and would like to become a Friend of the Sea or Friend of the Earth to contact us. It's very easy through our websites, and apply for the certification for the different sectors that I mentioned. And for Friend of the Earth, we're also involved in textiles, in mining, and several others. That's all on our websites, Friend of the Sea and Friend of the Earth. As far as conservation projects, also we have some conservation activities in the nearby countries. We are involved in general in whales protection, dolphins protection, also in the Black Sea. However, we are not involved directly with NGOs in Bulgaria. And since we have a foundation, the World Sustainability Foundation, we can, to the limit of our budget, provide support to NGOs projects which prove to be valid and delivering conservation results. And so I invite any NGO in Bulgaria who would be interested to be supported to apply to us